Well, hello everyone out there. It is time for our monthly safety meeting, the safety meeting of April 2021. Let me explain the rules for this once again. It is very important that once you've completed this video, all the way through to the end, you come and see myself, Miss Christian, or Miss Jamie to get the sign-off and the quiz for this particular video. And yes, guys, there is a quiz. Okay? It's imperative you come, sign off, and do the quiz. That's how you get credit for the meeting and avoid that infamous attendance point. There, of course, please look at the flyer for the deadline of this particular meeting. We do not go any further than the deadline. All right? So let's begin with our first topic, our California mandated harassment training. Now, for those of you that remember, about 2 years ago, we did this in May of 2019. Well, we have to do it again. So sit back, relax, and pay attention to these informative information when it comes to the California workplace harassment.
It seems that rarely a week goes by when a news story doesn't appear about sexual harassment. More and more, individuals recognize that incidents of harassment impact their daily lives and careers, including incidents that happened many years ago. This course will help you to better understand sexual harassment in the workplace, what it means, and how it affects employees and organizations. It also addresses what you can do to prevent sexual harassment in the event you are a bystander or witness, and when it is identified, effectively respond to and report it. When you have completed the course, you will be better prepared to stop potentially harassing behavior in the workplace and be aware of who to report misconduct to, both in the organization and others. You should remember that our organization has zero tolerance for sexual harassment. Note, in this course, the term manager also refers to employees operating in a supervisory role.
I'm Erica, and I worked at my former company for a little over 1 year. I was one of the very few women working there, and I've been around the guys a lot since I grew up with a single dad and 3 older brothers. When I started at my job, I tried to do my best to fit in. I ignored the guys calling me honey and sweetheart, but the comments bothered me, especially when a manager said I looked like a stripper at a bachelor party he attended. Gross. My colleague, Corey, said that he ran into similar issues. I think something happened that involved his boss, Maureen, but he refused to discuss it.
Erica told me about what she faced. I get it, because I saw it. I've also experienced similar conduct. She was nervous about telling her boss like I recommended, but that's what the company policy says to do. Anyway, her manager said he would take care of it, but last time I spoke with her, she said it had only gotten worse.
The next few weeks were torture. The comments got worse and yet more subtle. Coworkers shut me out of conversations. In my performance review, my boss told me that I was an excellent worker, but then he denied me a raise. He said that my complaints were disruptive and killed morale. So I took my report to senior management, but this woman said, honey, we've all dealt with it. You gotta let the boys be the boys. And when I mentioned my boss denied me a raise due to my complaints, she said, work harder and you'll get the rewards. So she's not going to do anything. I finally had enough and I resigned a month ago because I just couldn't take the abuse.
Erica's story is all too common in today's workplace. It illustrates many of the issues California employees may regularly face. Sexual harassment has a damaging impact on victims, coworkers, managers, and the organization. According to studies by the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC, and California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, DFEH, victims of sexual harassment experience increased stress, psychological damage, and economic loss if they quit or lose their job due to retaliation. Managers who investigate incidents lose productive time and must face difficult decisions on how to handle situations. Bystanders and witnesses are impacted by a struggle to digest what they have seen and the stress of wondering how to report it. Organizations find it difficult to attract and retain the best talent if they earn a reputation for tolerating harassment. All employees have ethical responsibilities to protect the organization from sexual harassment. Remember this, as throughout this course, you learn to understand, prevent, recognize, and address sexual harassment. Given the statistics provided earlier about the impact of sexual harassment, our organization has a zero-tolerance policy toward harassment of any kind. This means that if an investigation reveals harassment has occurred, the organization will stop it and immediately take prompt and swift disciplinary action, including termination where appropriate. Repeated behavior is particularly serious. The organization will respond to it immediately. Now that you know how seriously we take this conduct, let's hear more about Erica's situation before we further explore sexual harassment.
It's been a month since I resigned, and I'm still angry. The company didn't even try to correct the problem I reported or keep me. I feel hurt and disrespected. I can't believe a company I worked hard for would treat an employee this way. And I know some coworkers were bothered by what I experienced. They told me so. Before I resigned, I could tell the harassing conduct was taking a toll on everyone. No one seemed enthusiastic about coming to work. What really surprised me, though, is that none of the managers intervened. One even participated in the harassment. And what happened to me was wrong. And I read it was against company policy before I went to leadership. I'm pretty sure it's against the law. It would teach management a lesson if I filed a formal complaint with a regulator.
Given what we heard from Erica, what are some reasons for preventing sexual harassment in the workplace? Sexual harassment is illegal under U.S. federal and California law. It is hurtful to both the target of harassment and coworkers who witness or learn of it. Sexual harassment is disrespectful to all of an organization's employees. Ultimately, it is bad for business as it undermines a fair and non-discriminatory workplace and demeans a culture of mutual respect. For these reasons and more, it is in everyone's best interest to prevent, identify, and stop sexual harassment in the workplace. Let's look at some important information about sexual harassment to better understand its pervasiveness and impact. Select each image to learn more. A recent study. In 2017, the EEOC and DFEH created separate task forces to study sexual harassment in the workplace. The task forces were charged with determining how much of a problem sexual harassment in the workplace still is today in the United States and California alike. Study findings. These studies found the following. 45% of harassment claims are sex-based. As many as 85% of women have experienced sexual harassment in the workplace. 75% of victims claim retaliation when reporting sexual harassment. At least 87% of those experiencing harassment do not file a formal complaint. Sexual harassment costs companies millions of dollars every year. Outcomes. Sexual harassment is both important and costly, both economically and non-economically. This behavior impacts the office environment and morale, and we will not tolerate it. It is something all employees must take steps to ensure does not occur within our organization. Now, let's get an understanding of how sexual harassment developed under federal and California law. Select each topic to learn more. The early days. As early as the 1920s, companies provided women with literature on how to ward off lecherous advances by coworkers. But for many years, the federal law did not prohibit any form of harassment. The 1960s and Civil Rights Act. In 1964, the U.S. Congress passed Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Title VII prohibited sex discrimination in the workplace under federal law. At the time, this meant employers could not give men preferential treatment simply because of their gender. In the late 1960s and throughout the 1970s, California broadened prohibitions on workplace discrimination and harassment, both through case law, legislative updates, and state constitutional interpretation. California law's definition of sexual harassment was expanded in the early 1970s. As the most progressive and employee-friendly state in the country in addressing sexual harassment, California continued broadening its laws in the late 1970s and into the 1980s and 1990s. The 1990s. In the late 1990s, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in two prominent cases that a company must take steps to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace. The court also ruled that companies can be liable for incidents of workplace sexual harassment. As awareness of sexual harassment increased, more and more states enacted laws clarifying the definition of sexual harassment and raising requirements on organizations to prevent this type of misconduct. In 2007, California became the third state to require certain employees to take training on sexual harassment. Sexual harassment under the law emerges from a variety of federal, state, and local statutes, evolving case law, and regulations. These rules further define what acts are considered as illegal harassment. Select each image to learn more. Generally, harassment involves illegal, discriminatory conduct directed at someone due to that person's legally protected characteristics, such as sex, age, race, or others. Harassment includes offensive behavior which can be motivated by stereotypes about a protected characteristic, or simply which makes the targeted person uncomfortable because of the focus on a protected characteristic. The targeted person may be a member in a protected group, or simply associated with such a group. For instance, a man can be offended by harassment directed at women. Certain behaviors. Certain behaviors can include offensive, demeaning, hostile conduct based on stereotypes about a protected characteristic. Protected characteristics include membership in a protected group or association with a particular group. California law goes beyond the protected characteristics under federal law to protect individuals from discrimination and harassment based on their race or color, national origin, religion, sex, age, disability, genetic information, gender expression, sexual orientation, military service, and marital status. This list is not exhaustive, and the law is developing. Additionally, some municipalities protect additional categories not mentioned here. Before seeing how sexual harassment plays out in the workplace, let's look at some important definitions regarding sexual harassment. Select each topic to learn more. Sex discrimination. Sexual harassment is a particular type of discrimination. Sex discrimination in general includes any type of bias on the basis of sex, sex stereotyping, discrimination on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation, and discrimination on the basis of pregnancy. Sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is defined as unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature that is used as a basis for making employment decisions or unreasonably interferes with an individual's work performance, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. The basis for sexual harassment includes, but is not limited to, any unwanted verbal or physical advance, sexually explicit or derogatory statement, or sexually discriminatory remark that is offensive or objectionable to the target employee, or which interferes with his or her job performance. Unwelcome conduct. Sexually harassing behavior is unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature. This means it is uninvited, uninitiated, or unwanted. Even conduct that is tolerated or even participated in, for example, laughing at jokes, may still be considered unwelcome. In addition to being unwelcome, sexual harassment is conduct of a sexual nature. This includes sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other sexually oriented verbal or physical conduct.
Hi, I'm Corey, and I worked here for 5 years. Last night was a company-sponsored happy hour, which is code for a disaster waiting to happen. They had the open bar, as usual. This time, I was a designated sober driver. My boss, Maureen, hit the bourbon fast and hard. Within an hour, she was pulling me onto her lap. She even tried to kiss me and told me I could lose my job if I didn't. I broke off from her, and we haven't talked since, but she seemed really mad. Perhaps it's not a surprise that this isn't the first time that this kind of behavior has happened. Just the latest. What was Maureen thinking? I'm pretty embarrassed and beyond offended that she tried to kiss me. I'm going to Human Resources to see what could be done to stop this. I don't even know how I can work around her anymore.
Based on Corey's account, Maureen's behavior at the happy hour was clearly uninvited, involved physical conduct that bothered Corey, and that made it difficult for him to come to work. Maureen's behavior also was unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature that could lead to a claim of harassment. Sexual harassment can reveal itself in various forms. As mentioned, to be illegal sexual harassment in California, the conduct must be used as a basis for making employment decisions, unreasonably interfere with an individual's work performance, and create an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Consider how Corey felt after Maureen's behavior at the happy hour. If unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature is sufficient to interfere with someone's work performance or negatively affects the work environment, it meets the definition of sexual harassment, whether or not it was intended. Sex stereotyping is another basis for harassment that is often ignored or misunderstood. Select each photo to learn more. What is sex stereotyping? Sex stereotyping occurs when others consider a person's conduct or personality traits as inappropriate because they may not conform to the other's ideas or perceptions about how individuals of either sex should act or look. Examples of sex stereotyping: harassing a person because that person does not conform to gender stereotypes such as appropriate looks, speech, personality, or lifestyle is sexual harassment. Harassment that targets someone because he or she is performing a job that is usually or was mostly performed by the opposite sex is sex discrimination. Let's look at some people.
Hey, Gina. I saw this stuffed panda while I was out, and I just had to get it for you. Every time I see a cute little panda, I can't help but think of you. Mwah. I can't figure out why that might be, but nevertheless, I have to do it. There's just something about you. Maybe it's the way you carry yourself.
Anthony, once again, can you cool it with the comments? They're creeping me out.
Hey, relax, my little panda. I mean no harm.
See what I'm dealing with here? This guy patronizes me on a daily basis. All of my coworkers agree. His constant comments about pandas aren't just creepy, they're slurs. It's bad enough that Anthony hits on me, but the whole panda thing feels racist. I've had it, and I'm going to complain.
Guess she took that the wrong way. Look, I'm not here to offend. Where I come from, we give our friends gifts and treat the ladies special. Pandas are cute and cuddly, just like Gina. I didn't intend anything sexual about my comments. Guess she just doesn't understand.
Let's review Anthony's conduct in this last scenario. Anthony's behavior was unwelcome because Gina clearly expressed disinterest in his gifts and advances. No matter Anthony's intent, his actions, when considered collectively, are of a sexual nature. Anthony's pet name for Gina, his gazes toward her, and repeated patronizing comments are topped off with his kissing the panda doll, which has a very sexual connotation. Gina explains that she is offended by Anthony's behavior, and her response demonstrates a person who is having trouble working in this environment. Therefore, even though Anthony did not intend to offend Gina, his behavior meets the standard for sexual harassment. This module covers the types of sexual harassment and the environments and imbalances that allow sexual harassment to flourish. Select each topic to review the 2 types of sexual harassment. Quid pro quo sexual harassment. The first type of sexual harassment is called quid pro quo, a Latin term meaning a trade or this for that. Quid pro quo harassment occurs when job benefits are offered for sexual favors. It is very serious, and managers and organizations face significant liability. Hostile environment sexual harassment. The second type of sexual harassment, and the possibly more common form, is known as hostile environment sexual harassment. Hostile environment harassment occurs when someone's unwelcome and offensive conduct of a sexual nature interferes with an employee's performance or work environment.
You look nice today, Nikki.
Thanks, Mr. Todd.
Hey, let me cut to the chase. Tanya gave notice yesterday, and she'll be gone in 3 weeks for a job upstate.
Oh, wow, she's been amazing at her job.
Yeah, she was amazing at a lot of things. And she won't be easy to replace. But Nikki, your work here has been outstanding too. And it looks like you're ready for the next step in your career. Interested in discussing it further?
Wow, I'm floored, Mr. Todd. Of course, I'd love to move up in this company.
I'm glad to hear you say that. Look, it's Friday afternoon. I'm stressed over this whole Tanya thing. Why don't we drive up the coast in my new car, blow off some steam, and discuss your opportunities further? It happens that I booked a suite at a luxury hotel for the weekend. Call it an office retreat, if you will. Assuming you don't have plans.
I don't know what to say here.
Well, don't say anything. Go home, pack a bag, and I'll pick you up at 5.
Whoa, I'm not sleeping with Mr. Todd. It's pretty clear now why Tanya quit. I want to go to senior management about this, but I'm afraid I'll lose my job, much less my opportunity for that promotion if I do. He is so slimy. I can't believe he thinks I'm going to sleep with him for a job and a ride in his car.
Actually, all of these... It's important to know about other elements of quid pro quo sexual harassment. Select each photo to learn more. Occurrence. Quid pro quo sexual harassment arises when a manager makes or offers to make employment decisions based on whether an employee is willing to trade sexual favors or romantic dates for job benefits. Manager exploitation. Quid pro quo harassment is serious because it involves a manager exploiting his or her power over someone else's job for sexual favors. Even one single incident of quid pro quo harassment can be a violation. Under California law, an organization is liable for quid pro quo harassment by its managers, whether or not the organization knew about the behavior, intended for it to occur, or knew nothing about and even tried to prevent the misconduct. Managers also can be held personally liable for monetary damages for their conduct. So, an organization has an added incentive to prevent this harassment.
Boy, is today ever a mess. A couple of weeks ago at a company happy hour, I'll admit I had a little too much to drink. This morning, senior management called me in as part of an investigation. At the happy hour, I got a little friendly with one of the employees, Corey. He claimed I told him to kiss me or he was going to lose his job. I honestly don't remember saying that. What a disaster. All I remember about that night is feeling happy and flirtatious. Who knows what I said to him? Look, I don't mean to go overboard, but if a cute boy isn't interested in me, that's his loss. We spend so much time at work, where else are we going to meet eligible people? I need to find Corey and tell him to keep quiet about this incident before things get worse for both of us. I mean, if he can't handle a simple kiss, then maybe this isn't the place for him anymore, if you know what I mean.
Maureen's behavior here was inappropriate on several levels. But when she got angry that Corey wasn't interested in her advances, she planned to use her position of power to threaten his job if he would not remain silent about the incident. This is another strong example of quid pro quo sexual harassment. The second type of sexual harassment, hostile environment sexual harassment, is the more common claim. Select each photo to learn more about this harassment. What is hostile environment harassment? It occurs when an employee is subjected to unwelcome and offensive sexual conduct that interferes with his or her work or creates a hostile work environment. Someone may create a sexually hostile environment through use of words, signs, jokes, pranks, intimidation, physical actions, or violence of a sexual nature and directed at another individual because of that individual's sex. Reasonable person standard. If the sexually oriented conduct is severe and pervasive enough to alter the conditions of employment or unreasonably interfere with work performance, the affected employee may have a claim as long as the misconduct would be offensive to a reasonable person.
I was very frustrated and stressed until this morning. At my last job, I was one of the few women. The men in my office would always call me sweetheart and honey. They even said that I looked like a stripper. It got so bad that I felt I had to quit because of their behavior. For the last week, I've been beside myself. Then, this morning, I spoke with a friend who told me what happened was actually illegal. All I knew was it made me seriously uncomfortable. Now that I understand more about what was going on, there's no doubt in my mind that where I was working was intimidating. My coworkers' comments made me anxious about coming to work. After I complained, it only got worse. I feel I had no choice but to leave, even though now I'm looking for work. Look, I'm not the type to constantly complain, but it seems to me that anyone who was working around those kinds of comments would have been offended. I just wish someone would have recognized what was happening and put an end to the harassment before I had to quit. I was good at what I did. I really liked the work.
To create a hostile environment in California, sexually oriented conduct must be severe and offensive enough to alter the conditions of employment and unreasonably interfere with work performance. Select each heading to learn more about the standards used to evaluate conduct. Severe conduct. To create a hostile work environment, conduct must be severe enough that the target employee is uncomfortable working amid the conduct. Generally, a pattern of offensive conduct is required to create a hostile work environment. However, in California, even a single incident of sexual misconduct is sufficient if the misconduct is very severe, such as exposing oneself or making demands for or threats of sex. While 2 or 3 incidents certainly establish a pattern, it is wise for a company to avoid any such incidents. Reasonable person standard. Instances of sexual harassment must meet the reasonable person standard. This standard considers whether a reasonable person in similar circumstances would be offended. It is not a defense for the accused to say that he or she would not be offended if the conduct was directed at them.
Wow. Mr. Todd comments repeatedly on my social media posts. He even pushed me to follow his account, and he looked over my shoulder to make sure I did. Later, I unfollowed him. The very next day, he asked me why. Anyway, Mr. Todd always manages to comment on the photos from my beach trips with my girlfriends. You know, the kind where I'm wearing a swimsuit. His comments are gross. What a creep. Wait, here's an instant message from him now. Ugh. It's a photo of him at a pool in Las Vegas with a bunch of scantily clad women. That's it. I'm letting him know this is inappropriate. He's typing now. You know you love it. What a creep. I don't like it. I certainly don't love it. Oh no. He copied the entire office on his reply. This makes me feel cheap and used. I was trying to criticize him. This is humiliating.
Harassment can occur in various ways. In this scenario, Mr. Todd established a pattern of poor behavior, such as creating unwanted social media attention for Gina. Once Mr. Todd embarrassed Gina, and with an inappropriate comment to the entire office, he clearly crossed the line. Gina has a good case for hostile environment sexual harassment. Understand that sexual or discriminatory displays or publications anywhere in the workplace can create a hostile environment. This includes pictures, posters, calendars, graffiti, sexually suggestive gifts or objects, and promotional or other material with a sexual connotation. Likewise, hostile actions taken against an individual because of that individual's sex, such as damaging or destroying equipment, or bullying, yelling, and name-calling, also can be grounds for hostile environment sex harassment. So far, we've discussed problems related to unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature in the work environment. However, there are other types of harassment that the courts and California legislature have deemed to be based on sex. This module covers those topics that are not directly related to the traditional notion of sexual harassment. Unwelcome conduct that is related in any way to a person's sex or gender can cause liability for hostile environment harassment. In the slides that follow, we take a look at some of the other types of sex-based harassment that commonly cause trouble for employers and managers. Select each photo to learn more about common forms of harassment that are based on sex. Gender identity. Gender identity is defined as a person's identification as male, female, transgender, or different from the person's sex at birth, or identification with neither gender. Offensive comments or behavior based on a person's gender identity are considered a form of sexual harassment. Gender expression. Under California law, it is also illegal to harass a person on the basis of his or her gender expression, which means his or her gender-related appearance and behavior. This is true regardless of whether the expression is stereotypically associated with his or her assigned sex at birth. Some examples of gender expression are hairstyle, choice of clothing, posture, choice of accessories, and behavior, movement, and speech. Sexual orientation. California was one of the first states to outlaw discrimination and harassment on the basis of sexual orientation. It is illegal to make offensive comments about a person's sexual orientation or do anything that may create an aura of offense to a reasonable person relating to sexual orientation. This is true whether the comments are about a person attracted to the opposite sex, same sex, both sexes, or no sex.
I wish I could just hide right now. My client Christina's out there. She's my worst nightmare.
Don't we all have difficult clients, Nikki? Our job is to make the best of it.
But you don't know Christine, Danny. I'm comfortable with her as a lesbian. And Christine knows I'm interested in men, but she always comments on my body and asks me out for drinks after meetings. And she makes the most inappropriate comments, like suggesting I visit her in her hotel suite and then saying she's just joking.
Have you clearly let her know you're not interested?
Several times. Both that I'm heterosexual and married, but that only seems to encourage her. She claims that all the business her company gives us allows her the benefit of teasing me. She regularly reminds me the customer is always right.
So if she bothers you that much, tell her to take her business elsewhere.
But she's one of our best clients. Even though I've complained to management several times, I've been told, impressing the client is part of the job.
This module puts sexual harassment in a workplace context. Sexual harassment can occur in any number of relationships and circumstances related to work, including office romances. Select each photo to learn more. Harassment by managers. It is illegal for a manager to sexually harass an employee anywhere and at any time, including outside of the workplace. Even if no explicit demand for sex is made, a manager who imposes unwelcome sexual conduct on an employee not only makes that employee uncomfortable, but also opens the organization and the manager to significant legal liability. Harassment by coworkers. Unwelcome sexual conduct an employee directs at a coworker in the workplace can create a hostile working environment. Employees who sexually harass other employees or contractors or interns will face immediate discipline. Harassment by non-employees. Illegal harassment is not limited to a manager's or coworker's conduct toward fellow employees. Non-employees performing work with or for the organization, such as contractors, interns, customers, and vendors, also can contribute to a hostile work environment if their misconduct occurs in the course of their employer's business. Likewise, the law protects unpaid interns, independent contractors, and those employed by the organization's suppliers in the workplace from harassment.
My company is pretty macho. People tell a lot of jokes and are pretty gung-ho about sports, and there's a real work hard, play hard mentality here. I played football in college, and I don't have much of a fashion sense. I guess you could say I don't fit the stereotypes of being gay. I don't tell people I'm gay, but I also don't hide it. I assume others suspect it because I often bring a friend with me to company social events. Several times, I overheard coworkers discussing football on Monday morning. They refer to the players they don't like using terms that also are derogatory towards gays. One guy called a famous quarterback a word I don't even want to say because it's so hurtful. And they do this all the time. I suppose they don't mean to offend gay people, and they aren't directing the comments at me, but the comments are insensitive and offensive to me, and not something I want to hear at work.
Corey's complaints are common. Situations you might not consider can amount to hostile environment harassment, even when comments aren't targeted at the victim. This includes where conduct focuses on stereotypes concerning certain protected characteristics. The perpetrators can include other employees or people who don't even work for the company at all. Now we come to the subject of consensual office relationships. While not illegal under federal or California law, office relationships can lead to problems. Select each category to learn more. Relationships with managers. Relationships between managers and subordinates are especially a problem. Forming a relationship with your manager you directly report to, or any manager for that matter, can lead to accusations of favoritism by other employees during the manager and subordinate's relationship, or by the subordinate when the relationship ends. Remember, you are not required to notify your manager that her or his actions are unwelcome. So what might appear to the manager to be consensual conduct can quickly change when the relationship ends. Generally, it is not a good idea to put yourself or the manager in a position where misconduct is the likely appearance. Similarly, managers are instructed that relationships with subordinates are inappropriate and should be avoided. Relationships between coworkers. We must be very careful in dealing with relationships between coworkers and refer to our organization's policy to ensure all behavior is fully consensual. Even when you and a coworker have discussed the fact that a relationship is consensual, let the other person know if anything changes so the relationship can end. If necessary, inform a manager who is there to help.
Danny, we need to get this project completed before Mr. Todd goes ballistic on both of us.
I've been working on it all day, Jack. Sorry I'm not getting it done fast enough for you. After all, you kept me up late last night.
Well, can I review your work? We were signed this together, so I should get a say.
What? You're trying to control me now? You don't trust me. Fine. Here's a report.
Whoa, Danny. Are you upset that the boss chose me for that new project over you?
Maybe I'm not happy with you talking to our colleagues about our personal relationship.
We don't seem to click here in the office, Danny. Maybe getting together after the company party was a mistake.
I'm glad we both feel the same way, Jack. But what do we do?
I don't want to transfer. I'm doing well here.
So am I, Jack. So am I.
While coworker relationships are not illegal, they can become uncomfortable when things don't turn out well. Here you have Jack and Danny competing for work assignments and projects while in a relationship. This can be difficult for both the employees involved and the company. In general, it is wise to consider carefully the consequences of your relationships on your work before engaging in them. Anyone who is the target of harassment or who witnesses behavior they believe may be harassment must inform the organization for it to be addressed. We encourage everyone to report harassment. Understand the following process for how the organization addresses harassment reports. So far, we have discussed laws prohibiting discrimination and harassment based on protected grounds, such as race, sex, religion, and other protected classes, as well as legal obligations and strategies related to preventing such behavior. But what about conduct that is not based on protected grounds? Although not necessarily unlawful at this time, all forms of abusive conduct in the workplace are unacceptable and against our organization's policy. Although abusive conduct in and of itself is not illegal at this time, even a single abusive personality at work can create a toxic work environment with serious negative impacts on victims, witnesses, and the organization as a whole. Select each category to learn more. Effects on victims and witnesses. The devastating effects of abusive conduct on victims and witnesses can include significant physical and emotional problems, isolation, decreased productivity, poor concentration, lower self-esteem, loss of morale and motivation, diminished respect for authority, and fear of retaliation. Effects on the organization. Abusive conduct can also negatively affect the organization as a whole through lost productivity, staff turnover and absenteeism, as well as negative impacts on the organization's reputation. Preventing abusive conduct is a priority within our organization. The following tactics and keywords summarize an effective prevention strategy when you suffer or witness abusive conduct in the workplace. Select each photo to learn more. Refrain. Examine your own behavior and refrain from engaging in conduct that is or could be perceived to be intimidating, humiliating, or threatening. Confront. Confront an abusive person in a calm, non-threatening, and objective manner. Abusive conduct is often tied to power, so making it clear up front that the negative behavior will not be tolerated may put a halt to it. Deflect. You can deflect a verbal attack or aggressive posturing by simply excusing yourself with a response similar to the example shown below and then walking away. Document. Document each incident. Include when and where it occurred and any witnesses so that a pattern of behavior can be established. Seek help. If you witness or experience abusive conduct in the workplace and you are uncomfortable confronting the perpetrator or your efforts to stop him or her fail, seek help from a trusted manager or other resources. You can understand what sexual harassment is, know how to spot it, and do your very best to prevent it from occurring. But an organization cannot be absolutely certain that an incident will not occur. This module is designed to help you understand how the organization strives to effectively deal with awareness and complaints of sexual harassment. This ensures that you can feel comfortable reporting complaints so as not to fear retaliation for reporting suspected misconduct. Once you or someone else makes a complaint of sexual harassment, the organization has a legal duty to investigate and take prompt and effective corrective action. Failure to respond promptly and appropriately can lead to a lengthy and costly legal battle. If you bring a complaint of sexual harassment to the organization's attention, your manager knows he or she is expected to treat it seriously and handle it according to our organization's policy. To help you better understand our process, the following video explains exactly what the organization should not do when a complaint is brought to your manager's attention.
Maureen, I just had another unpleasant encounter with Christine. She continues to hit on me and it makes me uncomfortable.
Seriously, Nikki? Do you have any idea what I dealt with in my years working for this company? Every man, and several women for that matter, have hit on me.
I'm sorry that happened to you. Did it make you feel as cheap as it does me?
Nikki, I never feel cheap. When you got it, you gotta flaunt it, honey. I just play the game. And you need to start doing the same, no matter which team you play for. We're all working towards the same goal. Besides, it's not like you have to do anything with Christine. Just put on your pretty face and play the part.
Well, I don't think I or others should have to put up with this behavior, even from a client.
Sales is tough and competitive. Nikki, ask yourself, do you want to meet your sales goal and earn a bonus? Or do you want to feel all comfy and happy? Look, I know what the company wants.
This was exactly what I knew was going to happen. What's the point of complaining when the managers don't care about our company policy because they've never followed it? I have no idea what to do. I guess it's going to be back to the job websites on Monday.
The organization takes great pride in ensuring that employees feel safe and comfortable in their work environment. The following steps will be taken in response to every complaint of sexual harassment.
Maureen, I just had another unpleasant encounter with Christine. She continues to hit on me and it makes me uncomfortable.
Oh, Nikki, that's terrible. Tell me more.
Christine always throws inappropriate comments at me about my body and regularly asks me out for drinks after meetings, even though she knows I'm married. She even invites me to her hotel room. She does this all the time. I've tried to tell you before, but I'm afraid what management will say if I lose her as a client.
No, Nikki, you did the right thing coming to me. In my days, I've seen and been subjected to a lot of bad behaviors, and it's just not right. You know, we have a policy here against harassment no matter who initiates it. I had my own incident a few weeks ago, and it's allowed me to really grow and see the negative effect that even one situation can have. I'm sorry this happened to you. Tell me all about what Christine did so I can report it to senior management and see that we deal with this immediately.
But what about Christine as a client? Could we lose her to a competitor?
It doesn't matter, Nikki. We are great at what we do here. What Christine needs to know is that we value our employees. And if she can't control her behavior, then we don't want to work with her any longer. Trust that we will deal with this, Nikki.
Wow, that was a big relief. I'm so glad Maureen understands my situation and is going to deal with Christine. I don't think I could have handled another incident, and I was really considering quitting my job over this.
By addressing Nikki's concerns promptly, assuring her Christine's behavior will stop, and taking detailed notes throughout the complaint, Maureen has taken the right actions. Your manager should always take your concerns about harassment seriously. Here, Maureen did just that. Fear of retaliation often inhibits employees from reporting suspected harassment or assisting in an investigation. It's very important that you understand retaliation so that you can report it if it happens to you. Select each topic to learn more. What is retaliation? Retaliation is when an employer or one of its managers takes adverse employment action in response to an employee engaging in any protected activity. The law on retaliation. State and federal law that protects individuals from harassment also prohibits retaliation against anyone who reports harassment or cooperates in a related investigation. Protected activities. Any employee who has engaged in a protected activity is guarded from retaliation for that activity. Protected activities include making a complaint to a manager or other person designated to receive complaints about harassment, reporting harassment even if the reporter is not the victim, opposing discrimination, assisting an employee who is a victim of harassment with making a complaint, and providing information during an investigation, assisting a government agency in an investigation, or testifying in court. Protected activities. Any employee.
Mr. Todd?
What is it, Danny?
Gina told me about your offer to sleep with her for the promotion.
You don't know what you're talking about.
That's sexual harassment, Mr. Todd.
Danny, you have no business telling me what to do, especially given your little romance with your coworker Jack.
You're disgusting. I'm going to report this to senior management.
Well, good luck with your little report. I'm playing golf with your boss today. I'm sure he will have some choice things to say about you, given we just reviewed the file about you and Jack. Now, why don't you get back to work?
It's no coincidence that I was reassigned and given a worse shift and more remedial work after I complained to senior management about Mr. Todd's treatment of Gina. This goes to show you what happens when you try and do the right thing.
If Mr. Todd took steps to reassign Danny and assign her remedial work for making a report of sexual harassment, Mr. Todd clearly retaliated against Danny. Retaliation claims are not always as clear, but they always involve an attempt at an adverse employment action. Select the following terms to learn more. Adverse action. An adverse employment action against a reporting employee that may lead to a claim of retaliation can include further harassment, negative evaluations, transfer, demotion, or dismissal. Even if no sexual harassment is proven, a retaliation claim could follow if the victim or witnesses claim they suffered negative consequences due to their role in the underlying complaint. Your manager has a responsibility to ensure that any actions resembling retaliation do not take place. If such actions do occur, you should promptly report them to senior management or a person designated by our organization's policy. What about when you witness questionable conduct? Sometimes we can safely intervene to de-escalate the situation and demonstrate that the organization does not tolerate bad behavior. Review the following guidance about intervening as a bystander. Understanding how to prevent sexual harassment is important. However, you also should be aware of the consequences, remedies, and means of pursuing a harassment claim. Select each topic to learn more. Employer liability. In California, an employer is liable for the actions of its employees and independent contractors, as well as unpaid interns. Liability regarding manager conduct. When a manager engages in sexual harassment, the employer is liable regardless of whether the employer knew of the conduct. This is because a manager is an agent of the organization and is, therefore, acting on its behalf. Employee or agent. When an employee or someone working on behalf of the employer, otherwise called an agent, who is not a manager, engages in sexual harassment, the employer will be liable if the employer knew of the conduct and failed to take immediate and appropriate corrective action, or the employer should have known of the employee or agent's harassing conduct and failed to exercise reasonable effort to prevent the conduct. Contractors. Where contractors engage in harassing conduct in the course of the employer's business, the employer is liable where it did not take prompt or corrective action after learning of the harassment. Select the photos to review remedies for instances of sexual harassment. California Employee Remedies. Employees have a variety of remedies available under federal and state law. In addition to making a complaint with the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission or the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, which is required prior to filing a lawsuit under state or federal law, a California employee who files a complaint may be entitled to monetary damages if the employee has left the employer due to the harassment, or rehire or reinstatement. Employer penalties. Employers may be liable for certain penalties intended to deter organizations from promoting this type of behavior. Penalties include the following: payment of damages or civil penalties to the state, community service requirements, submission of compliance reports, and public posting and publishing of liability of harassment or discrimination. Other remedies. Other potential remedies exist for victims of sexual harassment, but those identified here are the most common. While none of the available remedies can make up for any severe damage the harassment causes, employees can at least know that the state does all that it can to protect employees. Now, please carefully review our policy.
I hope that was very informative, and I hope you have a better understanding when it comes to workplace harassment. So our next topic is ADA. I want to give a very firm reminder that ADA is still in effect. Jacob, why are we asking about ADA again? We know. I want you guys to understand, we are still receiving complaints through our foothill system of ADA. You must understand that if anyone requests the wheelchair ramp, it must be given. All right? No ifs, no ands, no buts. Well, I can see you walking. Well, I can see you running. If I were to come to your bus and say, I need the ramp, guess what? In accordance with ADA, you are required to give me the ramp. Now, when it comes to our wheelchair passengers, the same 4-point tie-down system, or depending on what bus you are, at least 3-point tie-down system, must be applied as well. If you are having difficulties securing the wheelchair, please contact dispatch. Do not, I repeat, do not continue in service without securing the wheelchair. Please contact dispatch if you are having any issues securing a wheelchair. Okay? That is very, very important. Okay? It's also important to understand to be respectful for those that have limited mobility, those with walkers and canes. Please give them time to sit down or at least hold on. Please use your preventative action to prevent any possible falls. Now I bring you to our yard locally. I want you guys to understand we've been getting reports of going above our 5-mile-an-hour speed limit here in the yard. It is very imperative to understand that for your safety and the safety of your fellow coworkers, supervisors, dispatchers, and Transdev staff here at the yard, that the speed limit in the parking lot, whether it is a bus, a company car, or your personal vehicle, is 5 miles an hour. I'm going to repeat that again. 5 miles an hour. Please adhere to these safety rules that we have here in the parking lot, as well as another friendly reminder to make sure that if the parking lot here is full, you utilize the overflow first before coming into the yard. Both parking lots must be full before you utilize the parking inside the yard. This is still a rule that we are still adhering to until further notice or if anything does change. Alright guys, so we're here to talk about Mobileye. For those of you that remember in our meeting back in October of 2020, I know most of you don't want to remember anything of 2020, but we discussed a system, a safety defensive system known as Mobileye, which is driver assist technology for the bus. So I'm going to run through these 5 different functions that it will let you know. Our first one is the forward collision warning. Basically, this activates at any speed from 1 mile an hour to up to 60 miles an hour if a vehicle in the range of the camera stops in front of you and it's still not moving and you're still moving at whatever speed, you will hear an auditory alert, as well as on the spyglass you will see a red car. At this point, you must put on your brakes and be prepared to stop.
Rear-end collisions are one of the most common accidents caused by driver inattention. The Mobileye system continuously scans the area in front of your vehicle, detecting all types of vehicles in your path, including motorcycles. The system calculates the relative speed and, in critical situations, issues both a visual and auditory warning of an impending collision with the vehicle ahead. The system can provide a warning of up to 2.7 seconds before impact, both during city and highway driving. Mobileye, our vision, your safety.
Sorry, guys. Our next function is the unsafe following distance. Hear me very clearly when I say this. Following distance is our #1 issue on DriveCam, and our #1 issue that we've been observing as of late, actually over the last year. So this might come in handy for those of you that like to tailgate. The auditory alert on the spyglass will come in effect at 1.6 seconds on your spyglass. The first activation of it will be at 2.5 seconds of following distance. Please remember, your following distance after 40 miles an hour is 4 to 5 seconds. Now let's just say you decide to get a little more closer than 1.6 seconds. If you get 1.2 seconds, that is very close already. There will be an auditory ding every 5 seconds. You continuously stay behind that vehicle. The only way to get rid of the ding is to re-establish your following distance, such as a defensive driver should. So this is very imperative that you maintain a proper 4 to 5 second following distance to avoid this alarm.
Maintaining a safe following distance between your vehicle and the one ahead of you is critical. If the vehicle ahead suddenly brakes, a safe gap in distance allows you to stop in time and avoid a collision. The Mobileye system monitors the distance between your vehicle and the one ahead of you at all times and in all weather conditions. The Mobileye system provides a precise, real-time indication of the distance in seconds. When the relative distance becomes unsafe, it alerts you with a visual and auditory warning. To suit your needs, the system may be calibrated to issue warnings at different ranges of distance. Mobileye, our vision, your safety.
Our next one is the lane departure warning. Now this turns on at any point after 34 miles an hour. So at that range, you're either on some of the main roads here or, of course, on the freeway. If you're going over 34 miles an hour, the spyglass will identify your lanes of travel. And if you are not using your proper signals and you start merging to your left or to your right, the signals will auditorily let you know that you're veering to one side or the other. So it's imperative, once you reach that 34 mile an hour limit and go over it, of course we do that on certain roads, and on the freeway we do go over 34 miles an hour, you utilize your proper signaling and of course monitor your mirrors for lane positioning.
Unintended lane departure is the leading cause of serious accidents. A fatal collision can occur within a split second. The Mobileye system is able to detect lane markings and can identify when your vehicle departs from its driving lane. The Mobileye system recognizes when the vehicle begins to drift from its lane without the use of a turn signal and issues an immediate visual and auditory warning, prompting the driver to return focus to the wheel. Mobileye, our vision, your safety.
Our next one is the pedestrian bicyclist collision warning. Now, the reason why we are updating this training is because it has new updates. This particular alert was not available in the dark, but now it is. In darkly lit areas, this will now be able to see a pedestrian coming within the range of the camera. It is imperative that if at any point, whether day or night, this auditory alert comes on, it captures when someone comes in the range of in front of the bus, roughly between 4 feet to almost 50 feet. Okay? It's very imperative to understand that if this alarm comes on, be prepared to stop. It comes on usually within the range of 1 mile an hour to about 30 miles an hour. Okay? It's imperative that we make sure that we stop when this auditory alert lets us know that a pedestrian is crossing in front of us.
Pedestrians and cyclists are the most vulnerable road users and are less likely to be identified by drivers. The Mobileye system identifies pedestrians and cyclists during daylight hours and can determine if the danger of a collision exists. In the event of a possible collision, the system issues an alert providing you with up to 2 seconds to brake and prevent an accident. Mobileye, our vision, your safety.
Damn!
Yeah, I just hit something. Did I hit your knee?
And our final warning on the Mobileye system is the excessing the speed limit warning. Basically, as you're driving along, the camera in front, the spyglass, will capture the next available speed limit sign and project it. If you do go above this posted speed limit by 5 miles an hour, the image will begin to enlarge, letting the driver know that you're going over the speed limit. As professional drivers, we are supposed to maintain under a 5 mile an hour below the speed limit. So it's very imperative that this helpful tool lets you know that, hey, I might be speeding a little bit, it's time to slow down. Remember, safety over schedule. Well, I hope this meeting was informative to you all. We also want to make a big announcement. He wasn't able to come and show his face. He's busy with his general manager duties. But if you see someone walking around that looks a little bit different, that you might be seeing Brian Ochis, our new general manager. He just started Monday. So if you get a chance, say, hey, you Brian? Because he's our new GM. With that being said, guys, this is the conclusion of this safety meeting. Please remember, okay? Mobileye is a driver assist technology. You are the driver. That system is the assistance. You control that vehicle. So monitor your speed. Use your triple LC. Look ahead, look around, leave room, and communicate. You are in control of that seat. These systems and these tools and these guidelines and this knowledge is there to help you become a great defensive driver. With that being said, this is your Assistant Safety and Training Manager, Jacob Ortiz, wishing you good luck, be safe, keep your eyes on the road and everything else that's out there. We'll see you again next month.